Welcome back to the People's Platform on the new U975 FM. We have been chatting on a number of issues this morning, but there was one issue in particular that we have been focusing on, and it's the issue of economic growth. This issue of economic growth comes as a result of a central bank statement that was published in the various newspapers in the form of an article. The central bank issued a January 2023 Economic Bulletin. That bulletin is available on the central bank's website, and in that bulletin, the central bank made a number of projections. On number one, interestingly, it stated that unemployment was down so far for 2022, and it also stated that higher than projected growth is expected for the year 2023, or I should say higher growth than was previously projected would take place for 2023. Joining us on the line now, as we mentioned, is the Member of Parliament for Mayaro and the opposition's spokesperson on trade, industry and commerce, MP Rushton Parry. MP Parry, good morning to you and welcome back to the People's Platform.
Thank you very much, Kiran, and good morning to your listeners.
And MP Parry, there are many things for us to discuss. We would, of course, want to get your views on this ongoing matter of the Dragon gas deal. The Prime Minister went to the Guyanese International Energy Conference and spoke about the Dragon gas deal. We'll get to that in just a bit. Let's start with the issue of the central bank's comments that growth for 2023 would be higher than initially anticipated. What are some of your thoughts on this idea, on this prospect of a growing economy in 2023?
Okay, Karen, so let's just take it back from what the central bank has anchored its bulletin based on a couple of the international organizations' forecasts as well. So basically, the IMF forecasted growth for Trinidad and Tobago is around 2.1% in 2023. And this is anchored primarily on the expectation of higher revenue from energy exports. And we must make that very, very clear. Now, in your run-up while I was listening to you a while ago, you were querying, what is growth? What are we measuring with growth? Because you're quite right. While we talk growth, we are not seeing any type of substantial improvement or development in the quality of the lives of the citizens on the ground. When you look at the collapse of infrastructure, protests for water, a spiraling crime rate, how do you juxtapose what the economic bulletin is saying compared to what's on the ground? So growth really is a calculation of, there's a formula that the bank uses, C plus I plus G, which means consumption, which is consumer consumption, plus investment by businesses, plus government spending. So when they tally the fact that the state may incur additional revenue over the period, well then they expect that as the state spends money in terms of, wherever they're going to spend it, you will see consumer consumption increase. And as the business environment improves, you may see private sector probably pulling out a bit of its cash that is sitting in commercial banks as well for an overall development. But that is normally a projection, a wish list for the country going forward. Now, one has to ask, where does the data come from? Okay? So the IDB and the World Bank and these organizations, they depend on various places to get the data to make a forecast. And this is where I have my challenge here on. So for instance, one of the primary sources of data for international agencies come from the statistical office. Now you know, and I know, that our CSO has been performing poorly for years. So much so that the new National Statistical Office, which was promised by the PNM since its 2015 manifesto, that hasn't materialized. And if you wanted to really get a feel of how failed that organization is, you just have to listen to the chairman of the RIC, where he said that there was no data that they could have retrieved from the CSO to look at the social impact of the increase in electricity rates on the man on the ground. And the last data they had was from 2009. So if that is not just justification to query, or to have a concern of the data coming out of the Central Statistical Office, well, I don't know what else. And just permit me 1 minute to tell you the other two places they get data from. Central Bank, which provides its own data. My concern is since 2016, the Minister of Finance and the Ministry of Finance, which ought to be a separate unit from the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago. The Central Bank of Trinidad ought to be an independent institution, Kieran. Unfortunately, the Minister of Finance and the Ministry have engaged in an incestuous relationship by the Minister inserting himself into the Central Bank operations, so much so that he decides terms and conditions of people's employment, and who gets hired and who doesn't get hired, stemming off of the Jawala Rambaran issue. And lastly, they get data from other ministries like the Ministry of Trade. And I want to anchor the last point on that in terms of where have we seen, and you would have seen reports where the Minister of Trade have reported that we've had a massive increase in trade in terms of export revenue and so on. While she is not incorrect, I can tell you where the gerrymandering of the data has happened. Sometime in 2017, the Minister of Finance instructed the Central Bank, in terms of the statistics, to remove certain categories of energy products like fertilizer, urea, methanol, these things. Move them from under energy and put them into manufacturing. So when you hear we've had this 80% increase in manufacturing exports, what has really happened is that we have taken energy products, put it into the manufacturing categories. So as you have this increase in energy consumption post-COVID issue with the Ukraine war, you have this shoot up of demand for energy. So the minister comes and boasts now that we've had this massive increase in manufacturing. So just to answer the question, there is why I have my concerns with data, and I have a trust issue there.
So it is a recategorization, for want of a better term, of energy information into manufacturing information, and not per se an increase in the manufacturing sector.
So with that said, we have seen some increase based on the data in other manufacturing areas. There have been some increases in food and beverage, some other areas which is welcome. I think the manufacturers have done well, but the state has not provided the amount of support that they've been demanding. You know, they've been asking for more access to US currency. They've been asking for certain reductions in tariffs and so on to put them in a more competitive playing field. They've been looking at the whole labor issue as well. They have made several reports to the state in terms of handling issues around the ports, customs and excise, the ease of doing business. The state has not responded to them. So by and large, the refusal of the state to take certain actions, the manufacturers themselves has done reasonably well to increase production in those areas that they've done well in, and they must be commended for that.
You spoke about the issue of energy, and MV Parry, let's go straight